So this is the video launch of the book edited by Guillermo Castro Herrera and Sandro Dutre Silva with selected text by Donald Worster for dissemination among the Latin American public. Dissemination to the Latin American public. So we'll start with our first question. The launch of the book, Donald Worster, History as Natural History, or Donald Worster, La Historia como Historia Natural, with selected text by Guillermo Castro Herrera and Sandro Dutre Silva, is a gesture of recognition by your, Donald Worster, Latin American peers of the legacy and influence you have on the environmental history produced in Latin America and the Caribbean. What sense do you have of how important your influence is among environmental historians in the region?
Well, Sam, I'm sorry I don't have your agility with Spanish, and I say this to all of my friends in Latin America. I love you, but I don't speak the language very well, so I'll stay in English. I have no sense at all of what they're talking about. If they say so, I believe them. But I've been to Latin America now 4 or 5 times, to many countries. I've been received with wonderful hospitality, friendship, interest, intellectual curiosity. I'm impressed, but I have no sense of what influence I have had. I feel actually it's been a little bit exaggerated by my friends.
But considering that much of your production on environmental history has a very significant coverage of studies in the west of the United States, how do you understand this reverence and recognition of your work among environmental historians in Latin America and the Caribbean? So beyond what you've just mentioned, what else would you have to say about your own relationship with this region of the Americas and connections between the American West and Latin America, all of it or parts therein?
So, I mean, my American West has so many connections with Latin America to begin with that it's hard to be a Westerner in the United States, really, and not know about, think about, or care about, really, the rest of this hemisphere. I was born in a railroad town on the Colorado River. The name alone is of course, Spanish, and that river was explored by people from Spain and from Mexico and from Latin American countries again and again. So I grew up in Southern California and on the Great Plains of Kansas where Coronado passed. So these are all familiar to me. The work I did in the American West was for my own personal benefit. That's my home country. That's what I'm native to. That I know where I'm from. As somebody once said, I may not know who I am, but I know where I'm from. And it's from the Great Plains and the deserts of the American West. I never felt that those fitted well with the eastern part of the United States. When I went off to graduate school in New Haven, Connecticut, Yale University, New York City, Boston, I taught there for many years, in Maine. I love those places. Oh my God, I still think they're a second home to me. But that's not where I grew up. And where I grew up was a part of the country that was settled vast, has many Spanish roots. Even the state of Kansas where I grew up has many, many roots. I grew up in a neighborhood that was mostly Mexican Americans. The kids I went to school with and so on. Our Lady of Guadalupe Church down the street, etc., were there. But of course the connection is that we are all part of the same hemisphere. We're all part of the European imperial outreach, conquest. We're all part of a frontier of that civilization and its environmental as well as social impacts. And we're all just beginning to discover, I think, the full depth of those environmental impacts as well as the social impacts. We've known about the clash of cultures and peoples, but we haven't really thought about it in terms of ecology and ecosystems and adaptation to landscapes and environments. Well, if you've grown up in the southwest of the United States, you know what the people of Mexico have been through. And there is this same kind of physical, natural grandeur all up and down the hemisphere. That is just really impressive when you get to the west or to Brazil, Argentina, Chile. It's just an incredible part of the world. So that's my interest in it. That's where I come from. But of course, it's been stoked by so many of my good friends, like the people you just mentioned, Sandro Duarte, my friend Guillermo Castro Herrera. These people have received me, taught me, encouraged me to read about, and I should mention also the late Angus Wright. So I have been interested in this part of the world for a long time, but that was not my teaching mission. That was not my teaching assignment in the university life. I had no graduate students working in that kind of field, except for Sterling Evans, who passed up a few years, a while back. I don't know what exactly the year was.
So moving on to the book itself, this edited volume includes, edited volume of texts of your own, includes 11 texts originally published in English, as well as an unpublished text written as an introduction to this particular work. How do you assess the texts that have been chosen, and how do they represent your reflections on environmental history, your theoretical and methodological assumptions, and various themes in this field of knowledge?
Well, am I allowed to admit that my views change? That I may say things today that I did not say or realize or understand 50 years ago? I'm 82 years old. I hope I'm allowed to change and keep thinking and expanding. Many of those essays, of course, come from a period of my life in the 1990s, 1980s and 90s perhaps. There are a few in there that come much later. So I'm sure one can find inconsistencies all the way through them. One of my favorite philosophers, Ralph Waldo Emerson, said, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." I hope I have a bigger mind. I don't have that hobgoblin. I don't mind being inconsistent if I've really thought about things in new ways. I would rewrite some of my books today in slightly different ways, I suppose, if I were to be honest with myself. But I don't repudiate what I've done. It's just that I've moved on, and I think in different terms somewhat.
And one way that you've moved on has been your recent work with China, helping to strengthen environmental history studies in that country of continental proportions. Has your work with China in any way influenced you to broaden your horizons toward a global environmental history? And how do regions such as Latin America make up this broader view?
Well, the simple answer is yes, of course. How could I spend almost 5 or 6 full years of my life in China without being radically changed in my thinking about history, culture, nature, the land, etc. If I had spent the same amount of time anywhere in the world, I would have been changed, but China was the best place for me to go to be shocked. It is a country the size of the United States, but with multiple times the population. It has an extraordinary landscape and diversities, and I've been all over China in the last, since I started going there. 1998 was my first trip. I came back in 2009, and then I started going there as a visiting professor every year for half the year, from about 2012 up to COVID. I've been back 2 or 3 times since then after COVID, and I continue to think about China because I think for Americans it is an incredibly important alter ego. I mean, it's a country very much like the United States in so many ways. We draw huge distinctions between the two nonetheless, based on our cultural understandings. But those differences are diminishing in some ways. And China is today a very important place to study economic development, population size, demographic pressures, preservation of lands that are with endangered species, water projects, you name it. these are all immensely interesting to somebody like me. How can I not be interested in great rivers of China flowing down from the Himalayas if I'm interested in the Colorado River flowing down through the Gulf into the Gulf of Mexico? I mean, this is just into Baja California, not the Gulf of Mexico. So it's just an amazing country for lessons, questions, comparisons, and understanding of commonalities. And once you've taken that step, you begin to understand that we have spent too much time talking about cultural differences and not enough about commonalities. And China has so many commonalities that people have ignored with the United States, with other countries of the world, that we need to understand, probe. And similarities of ecology too. Dry, arid lands, wet, humid lands, they're there together, side by side, having a powerful impact. You can talk a lot about the difference between Jesus and Confucius, but that's not really all that environmental historians care about. It's not even always relevant.
So moving from China back to Latin America and to the present,
Yes.
in 2025, the Solcha meeting, in 2025, the Solcha meeting will take place in Brazil, more specifically in Rio de Janeiro. And we already have information that you intend to return to Brazil again to take part in the event. Can you tell us the extent to which this information is true?
How can anybody predict what he may feel like doing or be able to do almost a year from now? I would love to come back. There's no question I would love to come back. I love Brazil. I love Rio. I'd love to explore that country more. It's one of my favorite places on earth. And I would love to come, and I will try to come. But it's all on my own dime. I have to pay the expenses myself. It's going to cost me thousands of dollars. And I don't know what physical shape I will be in. I'm 82, going on 83 years old. So people out there, believe me, my heart is with you. I want to come. I want to see all of you and meet you and hold you by the hand, give you hugs. But I may not be able to deliver on what I hope to do. But I will try my best.
Very good. And for the attendees of that meeting and those in the orbit of Solcha, considering that the institutionalization of environmental history in Latin America is a recent phenomenon, and that Solcha has been in existence for 20 years, as celebrated last year at the meeting in Morelia, what advice would you give to Latin American environmental historians on how to do environmental history, especially to young historians?
Oh God, I don't know that I have any good advice to give to people who have done such a magnificent job of creating an institution, spreading it, creating all these young scholars and their interests and work. It's amazing. It's one of the great success stories on the planet in historical research and understanding that these people have put together Solcha and made it survive. We started in the United States with the ASCH. The Europeans struggled for decades to get off the ground. Now they're doing pretty well. And now Solcha is in a very rapid way developing its interest in, its expertise in this field. What advice can I give? What advice can I give? Well, I think one of the problems or differences I see between environmental history elsewhere and in Latin America is that there is a lot of interest in theory in Latin America. The theory mostly comes from Europe, and it's not necessarily native to Latin America. It's a lot of imported theory, philosophers, Marx, and all the Wallerstein and so on. I think that's interesting. I think the field, I myself am interested in theoretical issues a lot. But I think we also need a lot of case studies, really local case studies, regional case studies. We need to understand the deep historical interactions between people and the land, the environment, nature, all these things. Germs, germ organisms, flora, fauna, water, soils. We haven't begun to get all that information together. So we don't want to lose sight of that. We need some really concrete places to study. We need, I think, also to develop a very close relationship with the natural sciences, which I'm not sure has gone as far in South America as it has gone in, say, Europe. It's still struggling in the United States, but it's really got to be essential to what we do in this field. If we are not in touch with the natural sciences and thinking about ecology, all the environmental sciences, how they can be introduced into the study of the past and history, then I think we're going to lose it. We're just going to be writing a little subfield of history. We're not going to be transforming the historical imagination. And that's what I'm after. Not just a change in creating a subfield here over in the corner that nobody pays much attention to, but really challenging some of the fundamental assumptions that historians have been making. And so we can do that theoretically, but we also have got to do it in detail, show what we can learn about ourselves and about this planet that we don't know yet, very much in detail. So hunker down on a piece of land, call it your own, and really study the hell out of it. That's my advice.
Thank you for those words, and I hope that young Soldier members will think about what you've just said. So that wraps up the questions we have for you about the book, and we want to thank you again for agreeing to record this video, which will be released to the Soldier community on the Halaki Journal's YouTube channel. Your book will be available digitally and free of charge on the digital platform of Editora Unievangelica, the publishing house of the Evangelical University of Goiás, from the end of August. Thank you.
And I thank you, Sam, for coming here and doing this with me. And I say greetings to all of my friends, amigos y amigas in Latin America. I want to meet you all and see you and grab you by the hand and say you're doing great work.